Thank you for joining XRO, which is India's first AR VR MR podcast. And today I'm really delighted to have with me Kimberly Adams. She has had an amazing journey, has been part of some of the top global creative and tech companies. She started a career with George Lucas's company, Industrial Light and Magic, was a visual effects producer on several films, including Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, then moved on to become a producer at Pixar, executive producer, head of production at Oculus Story Studio, producer at Google Spotlight Stories, member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the Television Academy and the Producers Guild of America. She has spent more than 25 plus years in film and XR innovation industry and is one of the first VR producers with the content distributed worldwide. So Kim, it's a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. So there is, when I introduce people, I need to kind of like get onto the net, kind of dig into stuff which is interesting to, draft out the questions. But here, there is so much that, that you've been part of. It's, I think, a 1 hour conversation will not be justified because you have spent 25 plus years in the creative field, in the technology field with companies such as Facebook and Google. So thank you for spending time and being part of XRM podcast. So obviously I'm going to get onto your past, but let's start with what you're doing right now. You're part of Adventure Lab, this new company, right? So would you like to talk about that?
Sure, that's right. And it's a pleasure to be here chatting with you. Thank you so much. So yes, I'm the co-founder and COO of a company called Adventure Lab, and we do live hosted virtual adventures that you do from the comfort of your home, from your headsets. Our mission is to connect people across distance through play, and we're building a platform for social interactive experiences that are virtual and also live hosted. We really think the next great media platform is going to marry social games and storytelling. So social games being all about connecting us to one another, and storytelling connects us to an experience through world building and characters. And our secret ingredient is bringing those two things together with a live performer to sort of bring these interactive experiences to life.
Right. So could you talk a little bit, or maybe possibly unpack this a little bit from our audience? When you said live hosted virtual storytelling, could you unpack that a little bit? How does it work?
Yeah. So it's actually a double-sided marketplace. So one of the things that was important to us to do is to create sort of a new gig economy for performers. And especially this last year, performers have been separated from their audiences. So we wanted to give them the tools to perform and connect with their fans and followers and audiences. So we have this, on the one hand, we have the performers, and we've made it so performers can schedule a show time that works for them. So if I'm in India and I want to schedule a show that I can perform for anyone around the world, I get trained up on a certain adventure, which I'll talk about what that means. And then I will say, I want to host a show tomorrow at 5 p.m. and Saturday at 6 p.m. I would post those times to the website. If those times get booked, then I get a confirmation, and I just spin up a show from the cloud at showtime. I show up, my guests show up at the same time, and I take them through this live interactive experience. And on the guest side, you go to the website, you book a show time. The current adventure is VR only, but we're expanding the platform so you could actually join from any hardware device with a camera. And you show up at showtime and you're greeted by this live performer who is in VR, can puppet multiple characters. Experience we have live now, a character called Dr. Crumb, who's this sort of evil mad scientist, as well as a couple animal characters. One is sort of your chief, and then the other one is a surprise character that you may or may not find. But takes you sort of through a broad narrative experience. There's a broad structure that you are there as secret agents, and your job is to infiltrate Dr. Crumb's lab and find out what he's up to. And then you're introduced by this chief character, this mission chief, and then you go into the adventure. You're greeted by the mad scientist who puts you through a series of tests to see if you're able to become his or her, if it's a female, Dr. Crumb's minions. So those tests you do cooperatively together with your friends. So you're each, you choose an animal avatar. So you're either a dog, a cat, a bunny, or a hamster, and you work together to beat the clock in the specific cooperative activities that you have to do together, whether it's building something with blocks together, or racing through a puzzle together to try to solve something. There's a series of 3 of those things that are strung together by this broad narrative with these very improvisational moments in between that you have with the performer.
Right. Yeah, how cool is that? It sounds really exciting and fun. So would you like to kind of tell me, like, what's the limit on the players and why a virtual host running the show? Does it inhibit you from scaling?
Well, that's a really good question. Oh, the limit is that up to 8 people in the current experience.
Right.
We are talking about other experiences that could be much larger. We're talking about a virtual game show where you could have 2 teams of 10, and you can have 50 people on the screen participating in a larger way. And then also we can stream the gameplay to other platforms, so Twitch or Facebook Live, or it's streamable, so you can have a much larger audience beyond that as well. We're talking about doing a haunted house adventure where the performer embodies different ghosts and actually live crafts the scaring as you're moving through the experience, and that can be 10 people in each in different areas of the house, so that experience could be 30. But yeah, it's not meant to be massive, like 1 to thousands. I think the most successful experiences are a little bit smaller, 1 to 100 or less. But the current one that we have first launched with is up to 8 people at a time. And the performer, it's funny, the first thing we wanted to prove, because we got this question initially from investors, was like, why not just do AI? Why not, in gaming, people are used to AI characters responding to them. And there's something really magical about having a live person greet you inside VR, especially with your friends. And it's a kind of magic that people don't get until they've done it. And it's a really fun moment for us when people kind of come in and the performer is talking to them and they're like, yeah. They think it's an AI. And then that moment where the performer says, oh, I see, you're going to be the troublemaker in here because of what you just said. And they go, wait, what? It's a real person. And it's sort of like that moment, if you've ever gone to see a stand-up comedy show and suddenly the comic picks you out of the crowd in front of everyone, and there's that exchange back and forth, and the hair kind of stands up on the back of your neck, and it's sort of like, oh, they're just talking to me. And then even everyone close to them in the bar or wherever feels special because they're like, oh, it's that person, and that you're kind of a part of it. And it's this magic. And in doing our first beta testing, the first thing people said when they finished the experience that they loved was the interaction with the live performer.
Right.
99% of people said that just couldn't be replaced with an AI.
Improvisational theater experience where it's live and interactive. The best part is when you don't know what's going on. The unexpected creates narrative branches which can get super interesting. So yes, that's like really cool. But since you have spent 25 years in this field of creative industry, and then with companies such as Facebook and Google, the assumption would be that eventually you would get into maybe a narrative that's driven with an AI storyline, because I think there are a lot of companies at this point in time who are working on interactive storytelling with a basic AI-driven story, so it kind of branches out in different narratives. Though yes, at this point in time, we don't have something which can create that magical interaction which can happen with a real a character, a real actor. But do you have plans in the near future to leverage artificial intelligence to taking it further?
I think there's a lot of teams out there who are going after that, and they're incredible. For this company, though, we really wanted to leverage the live performance, and how that would scale is that we'll have, not just, we won't be the bottleneck for content. We're kind of bootstrapping the content and hiring the performers right now to kind of get things going. But ultimately we would have, hundreds of developers on the platform developing all kinds of content that is live hosted, and thousands of performers around the world. And just to give you, and all that, we can have multiple shows all around, 24 hours a day. And we have a revenue share model with the performers and the devs. So everybody's incentivized to promote the different kinds of shows. I mean, we could have tourism, we could have education. So it's a much larger platform. And to give you a sense, we have not recruited performers. I have a core group of performers that runs shows every week, but I've had 100 performers reach out who want to audition to be performers. And we've seen that, the idea of a performer these days has changed, right? Now it's expanded to, TikTok influencers and Twitch influencers. And so we wanted to make something that's more for them. And we're seeing some trends now, or we've been watching trends for years. I mean, for the last, even before the pandemic, millennials and Gen Z are hanging out on platforms like Minecraft, Fortnite, and Roblox. And now during the pandemic, of course, we all know how to live, work, and play on platforms like this, like Zoom. And audiences want to interact with their content and have it interact back. They want to feel like if they missed it, they missed out. That's why things like Clubhouse and Discord and Twitch are really taking off, because of that feeling of intimacy and interactivity that I feel like you just can't get from an AI experience.
That is brilliant, because that is an enabling performers from around the world. And that is a great opportunity, because yes, COVID has hit us, and there's millions of performers who are crazy performers, crazy actors who haven't got the right opportunity. And how do you manage? What's the strategy? What's the road ahead? Is it restricted to only American performers? Is it open for performers from around the world? How would that work? Are you also looking at developers adding on to your existing stories? How would that work? Could you just talk a little bit more about
I mean, right now it's still really early days. And so we've had our current performers, we only have 4 performers on the platform right now who host shows every week. After they do a show, they immediately give us feedback on if something went wrong, if a guest requested something, if they were stuck, or a narrative idea that they had. So we're continually gathering feedback both from guests and performers as we build not only the hosting tools for the performers to use to make sure it's really easy to learn and to use, and then also for the developers, the SDK that we're developing for the developers. And so eventually there'll be this sort of layered training process that we do right now will be condensed into about a week long. Right now it's about 2 weeks, and it involves meeting with the engineer inside the build to learn how to get around in VR, to take a look at the tool set. So on the tools, I keep going like this because it shows up on their arm in VR, and it's the script, and they can progress the story forward. They have a number of options in every scene, whether they can, make confetti come down, or control the music, or audio effects, or, there's a bunch of different things that they can do within each set as they progress the story forward. So we teach them how to use that, and we teach them, two of the hosts we have on our platform right now had never been in VR before. So we delivered a VR headset to them, and they got up and running their own shows within 2 weeks after rehearsals. So we also work really closely with the immersive theater director and creator, Janine Willett, who's one of our advisors. She's one of the co-founders of Third Rail Projects in New York, and they've been doing immersive theater for years. And she's an expert in that. So she's been really helpful in terms of bringing the performers on and what the performers need to feel really confident to get on the platform and perform. Ultimately, we do have requests from around the world already for performers around the world. We're going to, scale. We've been around for 2 years. We're going to scale up so that we can incorporate folks from all over, all different languages. And yes, they can spin up a show from their couch wherever they are in the world, as long as they have. Right now, we're using the Quest 1 or 2 headsets for their performers to drive the experience.
Lovely. Yeah. So you said right now you've got four performers and a bunch of developers. Now this sounds really cumbersome at this point of time because it's something which is just being understood. We just understanding the fabric of taking narrative which is interactive and which looks at these players who join in, and they could be from sitting any part of the world. So right now you have a single gameplay. What's the plan ahead? Are you looking at expanding on that, and how difficult does that get? Because when it's interactive, it's impromptu. How do you manage to take care of all those nitty gritty technical bits, the audio, the video, the gameplay? How does it all uh, merging together?
Well, I leave the technical bits to my engineers and to my co-founder, Max Planck, who's an engineering wizard and really the source of this whole idea and building the structure for this crazy thing. And they're brilliant. So right now we have Dr. Crumb's School for Disobedient Pets, which is the all VR adventure. And we have, I think we're running 8 shows a week right now. And yes, we'll expand into other genres. So we've done a test already for a game show experience, and we've been developing with Rafael Pavone, who's an incredible creative director. We've been developing a haunted experience that I was talking about. And so as and we really need to find sort of like what is our company's version of Pokemon Go? What are people really gonna love? I mean, they love this Dr. Crumb's experience, but it's actually sort of like a VR escape room. So it's very exploratory. It's a little bit cerebral. You have to work together to figure things out. And therefore, it's not something that you might want to play again and again, because sort of like once you've done an escape room once, you don't necessarily need to go back again. And it's not as fun to watch. We were talking to the folks at Twitch who manage the top 200 influencers, and they were talking about things that are the most fun to watch, which are that you can really see people's personalities come out as they're playing, and things that are very fast and things that can be, really funny and sort of fast moving. And so we're brainstorming a lot about content and what we can do next. We've learned so much from this escape room experience, and it's been the perfect thing during the pandemic because we're bringing together. Eventually, we'll expand to include strangers being able to play together. But right now, the platform is for friends and families and people that know each other to sort of buy out a whole show to play together. And so, giving them something cooperative to solve together is a really satisfying thing to do. And they come away from being together for 50 minutes or to an hour, feeling like they actually spent time together physically, which is a real magic we've been happy to deliver to 1,000 people. We've had nearly 1,000 people through the experience in the last year.
Right. So when you say 1,000 people, how many shows have you had? What has been the user reaction and retention of the players? And could you also talk about like the business plan, as in what's the pricing model?
So yeah, so we've had around 300 shows, and because it's as I mentioned, a VR escape room, it's not something typically people want to do it again and again. Although we have about 20% of people coming back and bringing different family members, different colleagues, a lot of different work colleagues, want to play together. It's a great thing for team building as well. We've also done corporate sessions for Salesforce and other companies who want to bring their teams, and we can do, simultaneous shows for them. So we have 4 performers, so we can have 4 shows running at once with their teams and that sort of thing. And the idea is, what's successful for us is, the number of shows running at any given time. And the performers will ultimately be able to be rated. So we'll have 5-star hosts and 3-star hosts. Hosts that are really popular will be able to charge more. So they'll be not only able to schedule their own shows, but name a price that the market will bear depending on demand for their kind of shows. And then we'll grow the platform, from, almost sort of like, a Netflix of VR, AR experiences where you have a choice. You could choose an educational experience, or perhaps you want a tour of the galaxy by a performer playing an astronaut. or perhaps you want more like a murder mystery thing to do with your friends, or you want an open world experience where you can play with strangers as well, maybe a game show experience. And so where we're going with the platform is that although we learned a lot with the VR, Dr. Crumb's show, we learned that people love a live performer in this space. People will buy a ticket online and they will show up at the right time and they'll have an amazing time. 96% of people want to come back again for another adventure. These are all things that were a total mystery, pre-pandemic, we didn't know, are people even going to show up for this, right? So we've kind of just been learning the market right now. Another thing that we learned is that people, VR, although it's growing, it's not there yet. So we had a lot of guests say, I'm the only one with a headset. I don't know anyone who can play with me. Is there a way for my friends to play as well? So last summer we sort of went heads down and we said, would that be interesting to have a live performer interacting with you on an interface like this, like where you have a camera-based device, as well as in VR. So we created this prototype so you can actually have friends in the VR experience with the performer, and then the performer can turn to you and the camera and interact directly with you. You can talk to your friends in VR. They can see your face live streaming inside, and you can work together. So in this situation, I have clues on this side that my VR friends don't have access to, and I can say, look in there, or I'm going to punch in this number on my keyboard, and it opens up a door in their environment, and we can all play together in that way. So that's definitely something we're going to double down on in the future, this cross-platform play, because it turns out it's pretty delightful. In the prototype, there's a point where the people on browser get to sort of prank phone call the performer as Dr. Crumb, and you have this whole back and forth interaction that's very improv on both sides, and it is hands down the most fun thing about the whole experience, because people have, it's this live performer thing, and it works just as well through hardware device with a camera as it does being inside VR. Of course, VR is always the best experience because it's the most immersive, but this is a way for people to play together and whatever they have. And it's also a way for people to say, oh, next time I want to play in VR, like I'm going to get that $300 headset because I want to do more of these things.
Right. Yeah. So yes, I mean, you pointed out that we are at this point of time, though it's there in the hype, and but still there is so many drawbacks with it, with the technology. The price points is a problem. Lack of content is a problem. The actual monetization, distribution of content creation in virtual reality is a problem. But I believe that this technology could be that tool which would help us break away from the flat medium and enter the 3D world, and like really interact and experience content exactly how we experience in a physical world. So I'm really excited for that. You didn't talk about the payment plan. What's the payment plan for?
Right now, it's $100 per show. And that, with 8 people becomes a pretty reasonable price per person. We found just from surveys with people that they feel comfortable with about $15 for a session, especially, it's just about the cost of a movie ticket, but it's with a live performance. Ultimately, when we have, we'll grow the platform, we'll grow the range of adventures, the number of showtimes, the number of performers, such that new content will be coming online every week, and we'll have a subscription model,
Right.
and there'll be sort of premiere experiences, and premiere partners and performers. And we might even play around with, really opening up the platform a little bit more UGC, so performers can put together, sort of handcraft adventures if they'd like to.
So, do you plan to take this virtual platform on a physical model, as in what the LBVREs are doing, location-based virtual reality entertainment centers are doing? Do you have plan to take stories like that over there? And what's the duration of each stories?
So each experience so far is 50 to 60 minutes. And that's what people felt really comfortable with, anything around 45 minutes. And it's funny because afterwards people say, how long do you think that was? And they'd say, oh, about 20 minutes. And they just sort of get lost within it. Yeah, that's not in our roadmap right now. Originally, when we first started, we had planned to do both, to be at locations. We had a potential escape room partner we were going to partner with. We've had a lot of locations reach out to us. as well. And we were looking at partnering with LBEs. But then the pandemic hit and we said, okay, let's double down on this home model. And what we're seeing is like the cost, the overhead cost of the brick and mortar build out and running shows and throughput issues and all of the challenges of LBE are not something that we feel like we want to take on, even though there's slow but steady growth in VR. We feel like we have a stake in the ground when VR arrives, when we have more and more headsets out there, but it's not something where we're going to go out to meet people. They're going to have to find us. And our way of getting more people to find us is opening up to cross-platform. So all they have to do is click a button and they're suddenly interacting with a live performer.
Thank you for sharing the details, Kim. Really appreciate this. And I think, the idea is so novel and I think it's got so much opportunity, once it really kind of takes shape, it can like really, really explode. Now, obviously I want to get into your past because you have been part of like some of the biggest companies. So would you like to talk to my audience about your journey, the experiences that you've had with all the companies, and share some maybe like exciting stories. I'm going to digress a bit over here because I thought I really respect Christopher Nolan. I think it's one of the biggest film or one of the best film that I've seen in recent time. But his action of releasing it on theater at the peak of pandemic, I don't know how well or badly it affected him in the entire film industry, because everything is moving. The COVID has been a catalyst. We are moving from theater to OTT and the social media platform. And one thing is there, that the audience is willing to come wherever you have good content. They will come to you wherever. So according to me, I would like to hear from your mouth, because you've been in this industry for 25 plus years. Where do you think the future of storytelling is going?
Well, I think that there will always be movies. And I love those traditional experiences. I am an Academy member and I proudly voted, last couple of weeks for the Academy winners. And I love crafted storytelling, and I love seeing story from one person's point of view, right? Sort of delivered to me. And, now you're going to look at this close up, and now you're going to look at this wide shot. And now I'm going to bring in the music to make you hopefully feel this. And that will never go away, right? There's a real beauty in that. And there's an ease where you can sit back and be delivered this beautiful piece of art, and this engaging story. So there'll always be that. But as technology develops, it'll continue to challenge conventional storytelling. Connecting people through technology into storytelling is one of my favorite things. And I think the most exciting thing about being in the space, sort of my purpose used to be sort of in the industry, used to really be tightly wrapped and around storytelling. And once I moved over from Pixar into Google Spotlight Stories, I really fell in love with working with the same sort of genius artists, but also very closely in a dialogue with the genius technologists, and on the edge of asking questions and just saying like, wow, what happens to story when the viewer can be inside the story? What happens when maybe the character is aware that you're in the room with them? What happens if I can choose to follow one character or another? And if I have agency over the world, if I make a choice that might affect the plot, these things offer just so many possibilities and opportunities that are not, they're not a threat to movies at all, but they're just something completely different, and it's this environment of inquisition, of being curious, that's so exciting. When I was at Google Spotlight Stories, the woman who founded that, ran that, Regina Dugan, who used to run DARPA in the US, who's super brilliant. And she always used to talk about this constant exchange of ideas as like an Italian dinner party, where you're like excited, everyone's excited and talking and happy, you can't wait to get a word in, and there's more questions than answers. And it's that kind of of energy that I always search for at a workplace. And we had it at Oculus Story Studio. You know, there was this brilliant mix of people from games, people from traditional filmmaking, and then we brought in immersive theater folks. And it was sort of the perfect recipe for that kind of Italian dinner party where you have a really great mutual respect for each other. And instead of, you know, I've been in a lot of places where engineers have worked kind of quietly in a corner on something for an artist without being in a dialogue with them. And they sort of deliver this thing to the artist, and the artist says, "Oh, thank you. It's so interesting you think that I would need this and that I would need it in this way. Like, I wish we could have worked together on it because what would really be useful are these other tools, you know." At Story Studio, we were developing a painting tool called Quill, and Inigo Quiles had created that and was working incredibly closely every day with Wesley, who was the artist for Dear Angelica. And so it was very much a back and forth dialogue where she would be, you know, at first they were bringing her 2D illustrations into VR, you know, and it was just very clunky and it wasn't reading. And so it was clear that she needed a paintbrush so that she could create for VR while in VR. So we had this one day, you know, sort of hackathon where everyone could work on what they wanted, and that was his pet project. So he created Quill for her to paint in VR. And so from then on, every day they would talk at the end of the day, and she would say, "Okay, I need my brushes over here, and I need this fine point, and I need this thing." And it was just this constant feedback, which created this tool that felt very authentic and very, you know, purposeful to the artist that it was meant for, versus being made in separation. But I think that, you know, as long as people are in conversation, the tech will continue to inspire artists. You know, there was this really great relationship that Glenn Keane had at Google Spotlight Stories with the engineers, where he sat in the middle of the room and drew his 10,000 drawings for that project and inspired them. And he would stop and say, "What if the character did this? Could this happen?" And the guys would stop and say, "I don't think so, but what about this? Would this be useful?" And this dialogue, and the engineers talked about that time with Glenn as one of the happiest, you know, best times they had ever had as engineers, was this like inspirational back and forth. And so there's such a richness in that, and it's about getting the right people in the room together and creating that safety and that environment where you expect you know, questions, and you expect failure, you know, because we don't have, you know, for every award that we've won at whatever company I've been at, there's like a whole stack of failures behind it. And those are so valuable, you know. That's why we do so much quick iteration and user testing. I think that's a tricky thing too, when you're coming from narrative, especially coming from a place like Pixar, where literally every pixel is perfect. Which is what they do and why they're so good. But moving from there into new technology, I had to really learn to accept putting things out there that were maybe not perfect, beta, right? But you really want to get the feedback is so valuable. So even the Dr. Crumb's experience that we have running for the public right now, we call it our ABE build, our awesome but embarrassing build, because there were so many more things we wanted to do to get it perfect before we put it out. But had we done that, we would have missed the boat. We would have missed all of this great feedback that we were getting from guests, and that helped us to focus on specific areas that we might not have before. So it's a very iterative process, and having that dialogue, of course, with the artists and the engineers is of the utmost importance, but also having that dialogue with the people using what you're doing, the guests, and their feedback is going to give you even more ideas.
Right. But do you see like technology creating like disruption and impacting the industry? Because, you know, there once upon a time there were these studios, you know, which used to like charge a bomb for whether it's audio production or video production. You know, it used to be like super expensive. Now we have these digital audio workstations, you know, and if you're a decent sound engineer, you can put your Pro Tools window and create content. And if you have a Premiere Pro or basic video editing software, you don't need these big editing setups, and you can do it at your home. And that's what's been happening. You know, right now you have these phones You don't need these like really hardcore cameras. People are shooting, creating content, because now it's gone down more into uh, storytelling, which is definitely very basic, does not require huge post production, because technology is creating that. Like for example, there's virtual production. There was these days, as a producer, as a director, you had to wait for a sunset. For a shot, you had to wait for sunset. But right now, with virtual production, you can create live SFX as you go. And then there are these Unreal engines, which is creating the capability of giving you photorealistic video. And then there is I'm a musician. I've spent 20 years playing for a rock band. Then just a couple of months back, I heard the song which from this band called Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, and it's done by an artificial intelligence. And I didn't think that would be possible. Artificial intelligence is reaching over there. You think that in the future, the narrative, the storytelling could be completely disrupted, where it could be deeper engagement, or you would have to like leverage maybe technology a little bit more? Do you see a scenario like that where we'll have to dig in more into technology? Is that what you're seeing, or is it going to be like an even playing field where it's going to be like humans only? Because I mean, we are the ones who have got the great stories, and we know how to create content. Because what are your views? I mean, I know it's a little vague question, but
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Max, my co-founder, and I had done so many incredible technical things at all these different companies. We're always kind of out on the edge, and we're first at companies like Story Studio and Google Spotlight, where we really were focused on narrative experiences, right? But those experiences tend to be solitary, and you're in there by yourself, and there's a beauty in that. But also, that can be isolating. And when you're in VR, and now, we have my hand controllers, we have our hands now in VR, and you're in there and you're so excited, you want to do something. So we wanted to give people something to do, and then giving them something to do together was incredibly magical. So it's all of that discovery. Like I do think technology will go deeper, and AI will continue to go deeper, and it'll be this constant exploration of how much games do you put in there. If you give somebody too much to do, they're not interested in the story at all. If you give them, if you don't onboard them appropriately and you throw a bunch of stuff in there in VR, they can't hear. Like our senses at this point can only take in so much, right? So you have to gradually, slowly onboard someone into an experience so that they can even hear dialogue happening, right? Because they're overwhelmed. So it'll be this constant push and pull and testing of, bringing in immersive theater aspects and exploring what's possible within story experiences, but also other experiences, more meditative experiences, more experiences that show you empathy for other people's situations. And I think that's some of the best uses for VR, of course, is in education and enterprise and training and medical and all of that. So I think that people will continue to use these new advanced tools at their workplaces and then bring them home. I do love that technology is being democratized, and that you can create a film, with an iPhone and other tools, but also, you still can't have a project with bad audio. It's just really unsatisfying, right? You still have to know what you're doing, and you still, at the root of it, for the narrative experiences, it has to be a good, compelling story. Otherwise, the market gets flooded with just a bunch of junk. But the things that really have heart at the center of them will rise to the top.
Right. Yeah, I think you said a very profound thing, because we have been overloaded with content, and it's very difficult to pick and choose, because there's so much. Because there has been a democratization of content in ways where I think anyone with a desire and intent, who's got a basic camera, can create content, and can create pretty decent content if he's got the right team. Through being part of Facebook and Google, I'm sure you must have been part of so much great content. What's that one single content which you are like really blown by and was like really impressed by?
Well, it's funny because I know I've spent so much time talking about live performance, but when I worked at Oculus Story Studio, the development of Wolves in the Walls, which I don't know if you've seen it, but it has an interactive AI main character, this little girl named Lucy. That was an incredible experience because we were working with, people who had experience in games and also narrative, like world-class animators that had been at Pixar, animating, and we're bringing in world-class immersive theater experts. And really, we've gotten to a point where the script was really stale at one point, and we brought in immersive theater actors, that is bringing in live performers, right? And acting out everything. That's when we really found the voice of the piece. The Wolves in the Walls just blew my mind that I could, sit and play chess with Lucy at lunchtime, and like that was amazing. Also, Duet at Google Spotlight, I didn't get to work on it, but it was the piece that really really showed me I wanted to be in VR AR, and I wanted to move away from traditional pipelines like animation and visual effects. And I really wanted to explore what was possible. The fact that I could look through my phone as if it was a window into another world, into this story where the time was, the running time was variable depending on how long I spent looking around or following different, it was just so incredibly mind-blowing. So I would say, and plus Glenn Keane is a genius, and he created all of these Disney characters, and he's a poet. And the fact that someone of such a traditional background would embrace new technology and explore what was possible was so exciting to me. So Duet is the first piece I think about as an inspirational piece. And I think you can still get that if you download the Google Stories app. I think you can still watch Duet.
Thank you, Kim. It was a pleasure and honor to talk to you and get your insights on what you're building, the future of storytelling. It's an exciting space because I think we're just scratching the surface with augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and there's so much which has not like really converged, because I guess artificial intelligence, haptic feedback, volumetric videos, all of these, once it comes together, it'll create a cohesive tool for us to build content over it, create content over it, and maybe this tool in possibly the next couple of maybe decades will be so democratized that we will be using this medium to tell all stories, because finally we are breaking away from a 2D medium, because that's been so restricted. It's a passive medium, and here we're getting into the interactive world, and where we can be the actor, we can get into the world. So I'm really excited for the space. What comes next for Kim Adams?
Well, we'll see what comes next for Adventure Lab. I'm excited to see what's in the next chapter, and I'm always just looking to stay on the edge, which is it's hard because it's not comfortable. You don't know what's going to happen, but the technology is advancing at such a fast rate, and as long as we keep bringing on really talented folks, talented artists, and plunking them in the middle of this space and saying, here's this great tech, what would you do with it? That's a place where I want to be right in the middle of.
Lovely. Wish you the very best. Wish you most success. And yes, I think a lot of people think that maybe the edge which gives you uncomfort is a very painful space. But I guess that's the place where all the great things happen, because that's the place where great things open up. So wish you the very best, and I hope Adventure Labs becomes the tool or the medium which gives us stories and helps us get into an experience story. And on that note, to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. And you can really appreciate this. Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was lovely talking.